Going on, everybody? I decided to start this thing back up. I'm going to do it a little differently. Instead of making a bunch of videos that are really long and take me hours to research and actually end up being quite boring for me and probably for you, I'm going to make much shorter videos about a variety of topics. Probably as time goes on, if I keep with this, I will kind of hone it into one genre, which I assume is going to inevitably end up being politics again. But I did want to talk about something that I am kind of passionate about, and that is my San Francisco 49ers. So there have been a lot of talk about the 49ers trading Jimmy or getting rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, maybe just walking away from Jimmy Garoppolo and getting Tom Brady. So Tom Brady's a free agent, and as we all know, Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time. And Jimmy Garoppolo's contract structured so that the 49ers can walk away from Jimmy Garoppolo and not owe him any money. Though he does have a contract for the next 3 years, the 49ers have to agree to the option for that each year. To be fair, I don't really 100% understand NFL contracts. Are really weird. But something about some date in April, if they agree to get rid of him before that date, then they don't owe him any money. And after that date, he becomes owed some money. And Tom Brady is kind of like a weird thing going on with New England, where there's some date up there where if the Patriots sign him before this date, they save some cap space. And again, I don't really understand all the details of that. But I just want to talk about Jimmy Garoppolo. So, as you can see, I'm a Jimmy Garoppolo fan. I'm a 49ers fan. I've been a 49ers fan forever. And as this year started, I wasn't on the Jimmy Garoppolo bandwagon. I was one of those people a couple years ago who had hoped the 49ers were going to ditch Jimmy Garoppolo and get Kirk Cousins. That didn't happen, and I'm grateful that didn't happen, actually. I'm very grateful that didn't happen. I would have been pretty displeased if that had happened. Kirk Cousins is not as good of a quarterback as Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm sorry, he's not. So, everybody's talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. He lost the Super Bowl, and he didn't play well in the fourth quarter in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes didn't play well in the first 3 quarters of the Super Bowl. He played exceptionally well in the fourth quarter, and he's Patrick Mahomes. He's the best quarterback in the NFL. I'm not going to pretend like Jimmy Garoppolo is the best quarterback in the NFL. He might be in the top 5, 8. I mean, he's pretty decent. He's really not bad. He's not as bad as everybody's giving him credit for, and I'm going to look up a couple stats here to kind of to kind of prove that. Remember, Bill Belichick wanted to keep Jimmy Garoppolo over Tom Brady. As soon as Jimmy Garoppolo was there was talk about it, Kyle Shanahan reached out and was able to make a drug deal with Bill Belichick to snag Jimmy Garoppolo. So if Bill Belichick and Kyle Shanahan think Jimmy Garoppolo is the bee's knees when it comes to quarterbacks, I'm an airplane pilot. I don't have the knowledge base that they have. I'm not going to question their thoughts. But I just want to look up a couple stats real quick. So this year, Jimmy Garoppolo is 28 years old. I'm going to compare him to a couple other quarterbacks at the age 28 and see how he did. So if I remember correctly, during the regular season, Jimmy Garoppolo had the highest QBR during the fourth quarter. He played exceptionally well during the fourth quarter. He led his team on something like 5 fourth quarter drives to win the game. He did play well. But regardless of that, I'm just going to look at his total body of work for the season. I'm going to compare him to a couple other quarterbacks. So this year, Jimmy Garoppolo was 13-3 as a starter. He had right around 4,000 yards passing, and he threw 27 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, had a QBR of a QBR of 60.2 and a rating of 102.0. All right. So that's what we're going to compare him to. Let's look at Matt Ryan. So Matt Ryan was at league MVP a few years back. Well, let's look at how Matt Ryan did at age 28. At age 28, Matt Ryan was in his 6th season starting. And he had started all 16 games every season prior except 2009, where he only started 14 games. So in 2013, at age 28, Matt Ryan was 4-12 as a starting quarterback. He had 4,500 passing yards, so 500 more. In fact, everybody I'm going to compare it to has about 500 more passing yards in the season than Jimmy Garoppolo. Completion percentage. Oh, I didn't cover that. Matt Ryan's completion percentage was 67.4. Jimmy Garoppolo's was 69. Touchdowns, 26 to 17 interceptions. Remember, Jimmy Garoppolo was 27 to 13 interceptions. So Jimmy Garoppolo had more touchdowns and less interceptions than Matt Ryan. We'll carry on. We'll look at his rating. His QBR was 65. Jimmy Garoppolo's was 60. And his rating was 89.6, and Jimmy Garoppolo's was 102.0. There's not a big statistical difference between those two quarterbacks, other than Matt Ryan was 4-12 and Jimmy Garoppolo was 13-3. You can look at the tools around them and the players around them and all of that stuff. I mean, quarterbacks can lose games for you, but quarterbacks don't generally. I mean, some quarterbacks do, but quarterback play isn't what wins games. I mean, it helps win games, but there's a lot of factors that go into winning games. So let's compare him to another quarterback who gets a lot of credit, although some will say isn't one of the 10 best quarterbacks of all time, and some will say he is. But either way, Drew Brees. So Drew Brees has been a pretty consistent man. He's never, I don't think he's ever been a league MVP, but he's been very consistent. He's played well, and he's won a Super Bowl, and he's an Iron Man, if you will. He leads a lot of statistical categories where he, because of his longevity, and he's played for so long. So back in 2007, at the ripe old age of 28, Drew Brees started 16 games, and he was 7-9. He had a completion percentage of 67.5, which is, ballpark where Jimmy Garoppolo was at 69. He had 4,400 passing yards, so 400 more than Jimmy Garoppolo. And Mr. Consistency himself, Drew Brees, had 28 touchdowns and 18 interceptions. Now, I get it. This year he had 27 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. But let's not pretend like Jimmy Garoppolo throwing 13 interceptions this year is something that outrageous. It's really not. It's really not that crazy. He had 13 interceptions. Like I said, not Tom Brady. Drew Brees that year had 14 interceptions. Was I looking at the wrong category? I think I was. 2005, 10-6. Oh, I was looking at the wrong one. He only had 40. This is Drew Brees. Oh, I'm sorry. I switched from Drew Brees to Tom Brady. That's why. 2007 at 28, 4,400. Drew Brees had 28 touchdowns, 18 interceptions. So one more touchdown and 5 more interceptions. Drew Brees' QBR was higher at 68, and his rating was lower at 89.4. Again, not a big statistical difference. And we'll look at one more, Tom Brady. So in 2005, Tom Brady was 28 years old. Tom Brady started 16 games, was 10-6. Tom Brady had 4,100 passing yards. That's 100 more than Jimmy Garoppolo. Tom Brady had a completion percentage of 63. That's 6% less than Jimmy Garoppolo. Tom Brady had 26 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. That's very close to what Jimmy Garoppolo had. Jimmy Garoppolo had 1 more touchdown and 1 less interception. Rating, they didn't measure QBR that year, but quarterback rating, 92.3. So lower than Jimmy Garoppolo's. You can make a pretty solid argument that Jimmy Garoppolo's quarterback play that year was better than Tom Brady's. And just sticking with Tom Brady, because Tom Brady, is the person most tied to Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo sat behind Tom Brady. They played in the same system. They learned the same system. And let's look at Tom Brady's previous years in the NFL. So, I can't compare him to anything that Jimmy Garoppolo has done because Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't played a full season, but Tom Brady had played a bunch. So in 2001, Tom Brady started 14 games, was 11-3. That's not a full season, so let's just look at his next few where he played the whole year. At age 25 in 2002, he was 9-7. He led the league with 28 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. Again, that's 1 more touchdown and 1 more interception than Jimmy Garoppolo had. It's very close. It's not that impressive. He only had 3,700 passing yards and a completion percentage of 62. So using the stats that I have available, because I don't have QBR. QBR is like some crazy number that encompasses all kinds of things that I don't understand. In 2002, you can make the argument that Jimmy Garoppolo played better. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo last year was much better than 2002 Tom Brady, or at least as good. In 2003, Tom Brady was 14-2. That's a hell of a record. But 60% completion rating or percentage, 3,600 passing yards, 23 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. So, he threw less touchdowns and more interceptions per touchdown, lower completion percentage, and 3,600 passing yards. The next year, he threw 3,600 passing yards as well. This is age 27. He was 14-2 as well. But his touchdowns 28-14. Again, I mean those seem to be pretty average numbers for Tom Brady till that year he threw 50. After that, he kind of broke out and became a much different player. But Tom Brady, until that year he threw 50 touchdowns, the most touchdowns he ever threw in a year was 28. And he averaged about 14 interceptions every single year. He averaged around 4,000 yards actually less than 4,000, but I'd say he averaged about 3,700 yards every single year. Jimmy Garoppolo is similar to that. Now, I get it. There's all these intangible things that you can't measure. You can watch the way Jimmy Garoppolo plays, and you can say things like Jimmy Garoppolo is loose with the football. And Jimmy Garoppolo forces a lot of turnovers. But if you watch these games, and I've watched every single 49ers game this year, if you watch these games, a lot of these turnovers aren't on Jimmy Garoppolo. There was that game against Seattle, and he threw 3 interceptions in that Monday night game against Seattle at home in San Francisco. At least 2 of those interceptions were deflected. And, I mean, they were bad deflections. I think one was off the hands of Dante Pettis, and I can't remember who the other one was off the hands of. But, he threw the ball, and it hit Dante Pettis in the hands, and he didn't come down with the ball. It bounced up in the air, and some linebacker intercepted it. That's not on Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo can't do everything, but he makes decent plays with the football. He has his arm is above average. His football IQ is good. I do think he needs to get better at his reads and progressing through his reads and finding open receivers. And there was a little bit of that in the Super Bowl. Where he just kind of struggled with that. But again, this is his first season starting, his first full season starting. Remember, he came off an ACL tear, I think week 3 or week 4 last year. So at the beginning of the season, he wasn't slinging it around the field as much because I think he was still trying to get comfortable playing quarterback again. And towards the end of the season, he played pretty damn well. I mean, he ended up, like I said, in top 5 in, I believe, touchdowns, top 5 in yards, top 5 in completion percentage, top 5 in QBR. He played pretty well, and everybody's crapping on Jimmy Garoppolo. So hopefully this gives a little perspective. I think we should keep Jimmy Garoppolo. I am on the Jimmy Garoppolo bandwagon, but I'm also not in charge of anything, so we'll see what happens. See ya.